Good afternoon, everyone. So nice to see you here. I'm Arthur Guilford. I'm the Regional Chancellor of the University of South Florida, Sarasota, Manatee, and it really is a delight to see all of you here and to welcome you. It's also nice that this is the It Matters lecture series, or IT Matters, a lecture series this evening featuring Luke Bency, security expert and author, and our own alumnus, William Esposito, former Deputy Director of the FBI. So it's very nice to have them both here. This is a little bit unusual for me because I don't usually do commercials. I have people do commercials for me. However, as you know, we're in the middle of a 36-hour giving challenge within Sarasota. And so what we're asking you to do, if you will, we're trying to compete for a $5,000 grant. All we ask you to do is to take out your cell phones or your laptop or your iPad or anything else that you want to use. You can do it as many times as many different electronic instruments you have, and just click. It's usfsm.edu, and we have these for you on your way out. But it's usfsm.edu/click. You don't have to make a donation. It's nice if you do, but it's not necessary. But it would certainly help us. We might be able to win the $5,000 challenge. And for those of you watching this at home, I hope you watch it before the 36-hour challenge is over. And also, please, if you'll do that. And again, you will have these. I also understand for those of you in the audience, if you have an iPhone, you can just scan this, and that will take you right into the site as well. And we'll be distributing those at the end. Again, I'm not usually the one to do these ads, but I guess they went to the top this time for the advertising, so I'm delighted to do it. And I'm only sorry that I can't stay with you tonight and enjoy the wonderful presentation. I'm double booked, and I have another reception that I have to attend by 6 o'clock tonight. So I know you'll enjoy it, and with that, it's my great pleasure to introduce the Dean of Hospitality and Technology Leadership, Jihan, to you.
Thank you, Dr. Guilford. Welcome once more to our first inaugural IT Matters lecture series. It is an honor for us to start this lecture series with distinguished speakers that we have here today. Before I introduce them, I would like to tell a little bit about our department and also the college. Information Technology Department houses about 150 students under the College of Hospitality and Technology Leadership at USF Sarasota Manatee here. It's a new college. You may remember last year we just created this college. It is a wonderful college that houses two unique departments, hospitality, management, and information technology. Under the Information Technology Department, there are 3 different concentrations, which some of the students are here actually, and we've been together with our speakers since this morning, actually, which I will tell a little bit about it later. The concentrations that our students can choose, one of them is information security, which is very timely with this discussion that we're going to have. And the other concentration is application and web development. And also we have technology management and project management concentrations. The IT, obviously, as you know, information technology is integrated to everything that we do. So it's such an important part of our lives, personal or professional. That's what we are trying to do here. Dr. Guilford just left, but he asked you to click usfsm.edu/click, and he said if you donate, it would be great. We need a new academic building for our college, and Dennis tells me that it's going to cost $28 million. So if any of you has a spare $28 million, just let me know. I'll personally come to your house and get the check. That's no problem. But as I said, I am the Dean of the College of Hospitality Technology Leadership. And the way that we're going to have this session today going to do is that after I introduce our speakers, they are going to be in conversation for about 45 minutes. And after that, we are going to open for Q&A. After that 15 minutes of Q&A, then a wonderful reception that is prepared by the hospital. The students are waiting for you outside. We will serve wine. Unfortunately, we don't have the real glasses due to all bureaucracy that we had to go through, but we're going to get there again. $28 million is going to make it very real glasses and a lot of variety of wine, but we have a reception waiting for you. With that, of course, we'll tell you about Luke's book outside. But today, let me tell you that this session that you are about to experience is not the only one that we are doing. Our speakers actually joined us since lunchtime today. We had with about 15 students a wonderful lunch. It was a very interactive session. They have asked any questions that they wanted to our speakers. That was followed by a roundtable discussion at 2 to 3:30 p.m. today, again on our campus. That was an amazing opportunity for our students. That's the reason why we started the IT Matters lecture series. It's an amazing opportunity, especially our IT program being online. This is such an amazing, and for the first time we have seen our students, IT students, that we don't see them because they are usually across the state, but that was very good. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our speakers to you, and then I will leave the floor to them. Mr. Luke Bensi, as the Managing Director of Security Management International, Mr. Luke Bensi serves as the public point of contact for all new business inquiries. In this capacity, Mr. Bensi has been a consultant to the U.S. Department of State, U.S. Department of Defense, and several state, local government agencies, as well as Fortune 500 companies. He specializes in conducting threat and vulnerability assessment of critical infrastructure and is a recognized expert on limiting the spread of weapons, narcotics, human trafficking through airports, seaports, and land border crossings. Mr. Bensi has worked in over 120 countries. Here it says 100, but we just found out that 20 more countries were added to his list. 120 countries, and has trained thousands of domestic and international students from police, military, and intelligence services on topics such as border security, counterintelligence, threats, surveillance detection, piracy, and recognizing discouraging terrorist travel movement. Prior to establishing SMI, Mr. Bensi was a senior security consultant for Raytheon Company in the Intelligence and Information Systems Division. In this capacity, he supported U.S. government clientele on national security issues, as well as performed business development in emerging markets in India, Brazil, and Lebanon. Mr. Bensi previously served on the U.S. Department of State's Foreign Emergency Support Team. In this capacity, he was responsible for immediately responding to terrorist attacks carried out against U.S. targets overseas. Mr. Bensi holds graduate degrees in National Security Studies from the George Washington University's Elliott School of International Affairs and the American Military University, as well as an MBA from the University of Sarasota. He received his Bachelor of Arts from Michigan State University and completed further coursework from the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School of Business, the Federal Bureau of Investigation's National Training Academy, and the United Nations Institute for Training and Research. He is the author of the book, Among Enemies, Espionage for the Business Traveler. What an impressive resume here. It's amazing. But we had him do the bull sign when we were taking the pictures with the students. I'm going to send it to MSU tomorrow. So he's going to be in conversation with Mr. Bill Esposito. Mr. Esposito is the owner and CEO of Conclave Consulting Group. Prior to forming CCG, Esposito co-founded Free Group International Solutions, an independent global risk management firm specializing in investigations and due diligence, business integrity and compliance and safety and security. Esposito also spent 33 years, underline 33 years, in the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, where he retired as the deputy director, the highest non-appointed position within the FBI. As deputy director, Esposito ran day-to-day operations of the FBI, reporting to both the director of FBI and the Attorney General of the United States. During his career, he held a variety of management positions, including special agent in charge of the San Diego field office, and assistant director in charge of the Criminal Investigation Division. Esposito was also in charge of all white-collar crime investigations for the FBI in the early 1990s, during which time he developed the FBI strategies for dealing with the savings and loan crisis, health care fraud, telemarketing fraud, public corruption, and other systematic frauds. During his time as deputy director, Esposito was the principal contact for state and local law enforcement in the United States. Esposito was the FBI's representative on the President's Commission on Integrity and Efficiency in Washington, D.C., and chaired the Integrity Committee of the PCIE. He was named as one of the top 5 senior executives in the federal government in 1997, in addition to receiving the Medal of Valor, the highest medal awarded in the FBI for bravery. In 1997, Esposito retired from the FBI and took an executive position within the credit card industry. He held positions with MBNA America Bank as Director of Corporate Security, Director of Facilities, Director of Human Resources and Education, and as member of the Management Committee. Had oversight for all administrative services. In 2007, Esposito co-founded FGIS with Luz J. Free. And he is a graduate of USF in 1970 when I was -1. He told that to me. And we had exchanged today that how USF, Tampa obviously, different at that time. Please join me welcome these 2 distinguished speakers.
Thank you, Dean. You know, I told Luke, who wasn't mentioned in his biography, that he was a quarterback at Michigan State University in East Lansing, Michigan. But I told him that when I went to USF in the 60s, we did not lose 1 football game. No, I'm proud to be a graduate of USF, and every time when I was at headquarters in the bureau, I would always ask the new agents, where you graduated from? And once in a while you get somebody from USF, and I'd say, oh, okay, you have a mentor here with me, so that's good. Of course, I wanted to congratulate Luke on his book that he just published, and I was, at least he tells me I'm the first one that he signed for the book, so that was good.
Actually, you're second. My wife has to.
Yeah, that's what I figured. But what I'd like to do is maybe ask Luke a few questions. My interviewing techniques might be a little stale because I've been retired for a few years, but we'll try it out here. But Luke, what I wanted to ask you, first of all, is you have this terrific background in intelligence and analysis and this kind of stuff. How did you get involved in this type of work to begin with?
I've always had a background. Well, first of all, let me just say thank you, everybody, for coming out, and thank you to USF for having us back here again. I've always had an interest in the intelligence world. In fact, when I was traveling, when I got out of college, I just thought, wow, I wish I had a job that would take me around the world and do cool things. So I went to graduate school at GW and did a whole national security intelligence program, and then actually went down to Miami and got to do some good work down there with the folks at the health department who had a bioterrorism center, and really sort of got the itch, the bug to do this more. And then 9/11 happened. And on 9/12, I got a phone call back from the government. I had been in previous talks with the federal government for doing some projects, and they said, hey, can you come up for 30 days and work some projects? And 30 days just kind of turned into, ever since up there. And in that time, have been sent around the globe on numerous projects, both for the federal government as a defense contractor and also in the private sector doing things. And really discovered from personal experience how difficult it really is for American business travelers to be out there, and what the threat of economic and industrial espionage really means. And I think we as Americans, we kind of are a little bit oblivious to how dangerous it is until you see the statistics of how much of our intellectual property is really stolen from us every year, billions of dollars worth. So began teaching a course on this with my travels, and just that course really spun off into a book on its own, which I'm very proud to have Bill actually write the foreword to the book as well.
And just so that we're all on the same sheet of music, so to speak, maybe you could just spend a minute or two talking about actually what is economic or industrial espionage.
Sure. Economic and industrial espionage is a threat to the United States where our American business secrets are basically being stolen. And a lot of times we don't even know. American companies don't even realize that their intellectual property or business intelligence has actually been taken from them. And the majority of the time that this happens, it can either be through cyber hacking, where somebody hacks into a system. We saw that recently. Google had a big case where the Chinese had hacked in and stolen a lot of Google secrets. But it's happened to all the major companies: Boeing, Archer Daniels Midland, Texas Instruments back in the 80s was hit by it. All, any major Fortune 500. In fact, the statistic is that every Fortune 500 within the United States gets attacked about 2.5 times every single year, a serious attack on those American companies, specifically for taking this type of economic and industrial espionage. And I should mention, too, what the difference is. I think a lot of people hear the terms economic and industrial espionage and use them interchangeably, and it's really not the case. Economic espionage basically means that if you are a business person overseas, a host government, let's say a foreign intelligence service, they are going to be the ones who are spying against you or stealing your secrets. For example, the Chinese National Intelligence Service is stealing the secrets of Google. Industrial espionage, on the flip side, is basically business competitors stealing your intellectual property or business intelligence. So that's not to say that the individuals who are conducting these type of acts don't have previous experience working in the intelligence community, but they are working solely for a private entity. And I think the country that we see this the most is actually the Japanese. The Japanese have a very strong industrial espionage program where if you are doing business with the Japanese, they sort of look at it as business as usual, or it's your own fault if you are dumb enough or naive enough to allow your secrets to be stolen. So shame on you, not on them. So that's really the difference. But all encompassing, we can say, we just call it corporate espionage, I guess, for the sake of conversation today.
Mm-hmm. Could I just see a show of hands real quick of how many people here have ever traveled outside the country? Oh, quite a few. Maybe you could just spend a minute or two also talking about why would the average business person traveling overseas on business, or even for that matter, on non-business, why would they be a target?
Yeah. One word: access. Whenever you are targeted, and again, it's not to say that if you're going to go on your next trip to London or Paris or something, and suddenly you're going to have a team of intelligence operatives following you everywhere you go. However, if you travel repeatedly, there could be a chance that sometime during your business career, you will be a target. And what the services or what those people, those individuals are looking for, what kind of access do you have? That could be access to your own company's business secrets. Maybe you have a family member that is high up somewhere in the government or high up in a company. Maybe you have, if you're susceptible to bribery, you could provide a secret later on along those terms. So really, that is the key identifier. And I think it's something important to stress. It used to be back in the old days, and old days we could say maybe 30 years ago, that if you were a diplomat traveling overseas, the diplomats were usually the ones who were deemed as, oh, that guy's a diplomat, maybe he's really a spy. So they would draw the extra attention from the local host country intelligence service. Nowadays, though, anyone who is traveling falls under that suspicion, even if it's just slightly or temporarily as they're going through an airport, they fall under this suspicion. So basically, you have to prove otherwise to the host country that you are not a spy, or you may be a legitimate business person and your business competitor has already picked you out as a target, and they're going to go after your stuff while you're overseas. And I should also mention, too, that even if you are overseas, you may think that, oh, I just had a nice, easy trip to Dubai. Nothing happened. It was good. I go to Dubai every month. Nothing happens. Well, you may be going to Dubai every month or some other country or some other city, and every time you go on a trip, somebody is accessing all of your emails, all of your passwords, and all of this, and you don't even know it. They're repeatedly using you for your own access.
Okay, you're a businessman or a person, and you travel overseas. What areas should you really be looking for? Are there certain areas that are more critical than others?
Absolutely. If you're a business traveler, There's really about 5 key places that you're looking that the threat is going to be greatest. The first one is going to be at the airport itself. If you are, let's say, at an airport's lounge somewhere, you're in the business lounge, you're working away on your computer, and that lounge has free Wi-Fi, and this happens primarily overseas, not so much here in the US, although it has happened in the United States as well. There's an ongoing case about this. But there's free Wi-Fi, and you decide that you're going to send some emails back to your boss saying, hey boss, the deal went great, and you put in your passwords and all of this, and you're talking about the kind of deal you did. Well, here's a little hint. A lot of times, the people who own that Wi-Fi network at the airport, that's not a private company. That's usually the host government. And by host government, I mean the host intelligence in service. So they're kind of reading everything that you're typing away on your laptop. So obviously, the business lounge is a very common place where secrets are stolen, particularly if we're talking the cyber IT side. Number 2 is going to be on the airplane itself. There's the whole art form or skill of what we call elicitation. Elicitation is when someone subtly, very subtly has a conversation with you, and they're extracting secrets during this very innocuous kind of conversation. So they're sitting next to you on the airplane. And while you have this 8-hour flight together going to London or Frankfurt, wherever you're going, this person is giving you a little bit of information, and you as an American, because Americans, we like to feel we need to reciprocate and be good in our responses, they give us a little bit, which is totally bogus stuff they feed us, but nevertheless, they give us something. So we feel obligated to come back to them and say, oh, I'm going to London for this piece of business. Oh, I'm working on a deal with this company over there. Or, yeah, we're projecting it could be worth millions. Well, this person could really be eliciting you. And you say, come on, I'm flying to London. Really, the guy next to me is doing that. And I want you to consider KLM Airlines right now. Has everyone's ever flown KLM before? Great airline, but they have a new program now that if you're on Facebook and you book your ticket, they will show everybody else on Facebook where you're sitting on that plane. So you can actually book your seat. So if I know that the former deputy director is going to be sitting in seat 2F on his next flight on KLM, I'm going to see that, and I say, I want to get next to this guy. I want to know what he's going to this city for. Maybe he's got a big contract or a big deal. So I can book my seat right next to him or anybody else. Likewise, if I'm flying on the plane and I'm working away on my computer in seat 2F, and you've heard the free Wi-Fis now that are in an airplane, completely unsafe. So you're working away in business class up in seat 2A or something. The guy in 34G is reading everything that you're typing. And this is not just hearsay. I mean, I have colleagues who we go on planes and we'll look at what the guys in seat 2A are typing on their computer. The encryption is non-existent up there. So the airplane is also, I would say, the second place that you're very dangerous. Third place, taxi cab. If you're in a foreign country or even sometimes here in the United States, if you're getting a certain taxi cab, there's a lot of times that either you're in a situation where the taxi driver pretends he doesn't understand a word of English or it's very broken, he can get you to the hotel, but really he's fluent in English and you're having a business conversation and he's listening in on everything you're saying, or there's a microphone recording your conversation in the back. Better yet, a lot of places I've gone, and maybe some of you have experienced this, you go overseas, you find this really nice taxi driver, and he says, oh, here's my card. I can be your taxi driver for your entire trip here to whatever city you may be in. You go, oh, what a nice guy. Sure, absolutely. Well, a lot of times there's pre-positioned taxi cabs that, if you ever notice, if you go up in the taxi stands and you see a vacant cab and suddenly everybody is just kind of giving you the finger, the arrow, go down there, and it's like the 5th one in line. You're like, wait, why are these 4 empty ones here and they've put me in the 5th cab? A little alarm should go off in your head saying, well, maybe I'm supposed to be in this cab. And this guy is just keeping tabs on me while I'm there. So taxi cab, another dangerous spot. The hotel, being the 4th one. Hotel, extremely dangerous. Anytime you're overseas, you should assume that you are under some kind of surveillance, audio or video, when you're in your hotel room. And I know you guys are looking at me like, this guy's nuts. We go to, I'm an account executive. I go to London or I go to Paris every month. Why is someone putting a video camera in my room? No, it doesn't exist. Even back as far as the 1980s, the Secretary of Defense used to go up and give speeches and say, the French intelligence service would literally do 15 break-ins every single day in Paris hotel rooms. And if you think that, oh, well, I put my laptop into the safe, everything is perfectly safe in there, and my cell phone, everything's in there, no problem. Well, let me tell you, what you've done is you've basically just put your equipment right there in a nice spot so the local teams can come in. Usually there's a master code. I've been in Bangkok before where my safe's been locked. I've called down, hey, my safe's locked. A kid comes up, 000 pound, the door opens. You know, and I said, well, how'd you do that? He goes, every safe is like that in case somebody locks the door, accidentally locks the safe. So what they do is they got everything there. They can download all of your cell phone stuff, your emails, everything like that. 15 times a day in Paris. This was back in the 80s. And again, just to give you more proof that I'm not just telling you fibs up here, the Director General, the former Director General of the Intelligence Service for the DGSE, the French Intelligence Service, his name was Pierre Marion. He's given numerous interviews on CNN, he's given them in Newsweek, where he admitted to saying that when he was the head of the French Intelligence Service, that he would bug the first class cabin on Air France flights. And the purpose would be, they would want to hear, if we were having a conversation, you know, how important we were talking, what kind of business we were doing. And then they would say, okay, the guys sitting in 2A and B, they're doing some pretty serious stuff when they come to town. And then when we would land, go through customs, we'd be sure to get in that special taxi cab that would then stay with us during the duration of our trip. And again, the taxi driver could take us out, sightseeing, and he just keeps us out, keeps us out. In the meantime, the team is back in the room downloading all of our stuff for our proposals, whatever our business pitch is, anything like that. So it's a real threat. And then the fifth and final spot, and this is all coming from my book here, is a conference or conventions. If you are going overseas to conferences or conventions, I know everybody likes to go for the nice trips to Vegas, but if you start getting some in Switzerland, Dubai, you know, Beijing, some of these other cities, you have to be alert that a lot of times you may be going as a setup for blackmail or bribery. A lot of times these conferences, you know, there's a lot of alcohol flowing, there's a lot of pretty girls, and there's a lot of blackmail going on. There was actually a British diplomat who went to Russia, and he was blackmailed, videotaping the girls. They come, they knock on the door, oh, can I give you a massage, something like that. One thing leads to another, it's all on videotape, and then suddenly, you know, the guy's back at his office a month later, he gets an anonymous email, he opens it up, it's a video of him in a compromising position with a note saying, unless you send us the specs for your latest R&D project, this will go to your wife, your preacher, your boss, you know, the Sarasota Herald Tribune, whatever. So these are real threats. And the reason I think you don't hear about them as much in the paper simply has to do with embarrassment. Imagine if you're a company and this happens to one of your employees. Are you going to go public with this? Probably not. Think of what that's going to do to your consumer confidence, your shareholder prices as well. Could send a stock plummeting. And statistically speaking, and we had this conversation with the students earlier today, last year in the first quarter of 2012, it was $13 billion had been stolen from U.S. businesses in the first quarter of 2012. That was what was recorded and going through FBI case files. It's estimated anywhere between $300 billion to $500 billion of intellectual property from U.S. is stolen each year. And to give you an idea, the National Counterintelligence Executive, that is the overall body for monitoring this kind of activity, they state that all of the research and development that is done by the National Science Foundation tallies, all of the R&D that's done through businesses, through the government, through academia, they pool all the numbers together. That number is about 2% of the gross domestic product, maybe 3% of the GDP. That same number of all the R&D done in the United States is equivalent to all the amount of money that is stolen by foreign countries against the United States every year. So basically, the thought from security directors from these major companies, if we can stay 6 months ahead of China, Russia, you know, India, Taiwan, these other countries that are doing this, if we can just keep a 6-month lead, that's all we can hope for.
Good.
That's a long answer for a short question.
It's good. It's good. Let me just clarify also, I think, just to add here, that in addition to information, there's other things that people want to get out of people visiting foreign countries, and I'll give you one example. But before I do, let me just also mention, you know, people say to themselves, well, you know, I'm not going to Iraq, I'm not going to Afghanistan, like you mentioned, I'm going to Paris, I'm going to Rome. What's the big deal? Plus it's our anniversary, I'm going there with my spouse. Why is this such a problem? Why should I be on the lookout? Let me tell you a story of an executive that I know. Was taking his wife to Paris for his anniversary. He got first-class tickets, stayed at one of the best hotels in France, in Paris. And when he checked in, they said, "Oh, you know, you're in one of our better rooms, and we're giving you a complimentary massage, couples massage, at 3 o'clock this afternoon, because you just all that long travel and want you to relax." And there was, of course, a basket of fruit and all in the room. So they come close to 3 o'clock. You know, they put all the stuff in the safe, and they go to massage. Well, the hotel knew exactly where they were from 3 to 4:15. And guess what? The room was visited. The guy checked in. He had a Rolex watch on. He lost his watch, all his jewelry, his wife's jewelry. Their passports were taken. Everything was gone. Of course, they went, as soon as they got back to the room, they saw that everything was gone. They called hotel security, the front desk, and of course, I don't know, they did absolutely nothing. And then, of course, I get a call. And by the way, I know Pierre. Because I used to make, I was on the Bureau's task force, worked with the U.S. government. I was one of the representatives when we were trying to pass we have an anti-money laundering law in this country, but used to meet in Paris every quarter to try to get other countries to pass the same kind of legislation. So I used to go back and forth all the time, so I got to know Pierre pretty well. But that's something that also can happen to you, and then not just in Paris, but any place where all of a sudden you get a complimentary something and somebody's gone. But you'd be surprised the number of people that come in and out of your room that you're not even aware of when you're staying at a hotel. The other thing I wanted to verify is I know, because I've heard, I guess, that we do the same thing over here, so I know they do it over there as far as the taxis and stuff. There's some agencies that even have their own taxis. Can you believe that? Now, let me ask you this. You're talking about the business person traveling overseas, and preferably what they should do is get a briefing before they go. Do you think that really happens, and do you think the average traveler is prepared when they go overseas?
I would say they're really not, and you can get briefings, and there's obviously plenty of places that you can go to get certain briefings. The State Department website, OSAC, the Overseas Security Advisory Council, they give a lot of good information on this. But unfortunately, I think a lot of security directors, they send it to their employees who are traveling. The employees, I got it. I got the top 5 tips. Yeah, it's dangerous. Watch for pickpocketers, blah, blah, blah. And then they go about their business. And really, sure, that stuff's a concern. But the real thing, like, for example, if I'm traveling over to, let's say, India, I'm not going to take my nice iPhone with me when I go. I've got a disposable phone that I only use in India. I've only got certain contacts on there that if the phone is lost, download, or anything, it's not going to compromise anything back here. If I am talking to business associates, I may not send it from my company email address. I may send it from a newly created dummy throwaway email address. And I'm not going to contact my office through this because, again, there's things as keystroke software that, let's say you go, don't anybody ever use a business lounge in a hotel overseas. All of those have the keystroke loggers behind it. You're typing in your password on Yahoo or Gmail or something. It's capturing all of those. But if you're going to communicate back with somebody back home, specifically if you're on a very serious kind of business negotiation where it's sensitive, you want to send this throwaway email address to somebody else who has a throwaway email address on the other end. You don't want to send it back to, Apple, IBM, Google, whoever you are working for. So that's something else you can do. And when you take your laptop, sterilize it before you go. I know a lot of people, they like to have everything on their laptop, so it's at their hand. But if you travel, sterilize it. Go on your trip. Make sure your laptop is with you at all times. I know a lot of people say, I don't want to take my laptop down to the gym with me. I don't want to take it down to breakfast every morning with me. I'm telling you, it only takes 5 minutes to get into your room, to put in a data logging software that they can just suck everything off your computer. Just keep it with you at all times. And then when you do go back to the US, then you want to go ahead and wipe down your computer again. See, there's ways that you can see if anybody's actually compromised anything. So you just have to travel smart. It's a few extra steps, but it could save your company millions.
Mm-hmm. I could tell by the looks on their face that almost everybody in this room does exactly what you say. You mentioned the Overseas Advisory Committee. Most companies, especially if you're a big company, and small companies probably don't hear of it, but that's a service that's run by the State Department in Washington, D.C. And usually your security person could call there and say, I have somebody that's going to Cabo San Lucas or wherever, and I want to know is it safe? Are there any alerts? What should I be aware of? Because it depends on where you're going also, how in certain countries, kidnappings, for example, is a cottage industry. And nowadays, there's organizations that's all they do. They kidnap you, and I think you've had this happen to one of your relatives, where they hold you, they ask for a small amount, $10,000, and as soon as you give the money up, you're released. But other places, it's big money. And it's amazing to me how people will hire security personnel in the States, and then they'll go to some other country and get up in the morning and decide to go for a jog. I was in Nigeria, and you really shouldn't have left the compound of the hotel where we were in Nigeria. I was there doing assessments for the U17 World Soccer Cup in Nigeria, and you really couldn't leave the compound where the hotel is unless you had an armed escort. But yet, one morning I woke up and I see this tourist going for a jog in Nigeria. And I had to say to myself, they're just looking for trouble. So these are the things I think you have to be aware of when you're going to different countries. For the average traveler, especially in the places we mentioned, Rome, Paris, whatever, Madrid, I've known a lot of people that within the first day of arriving, they've gotten something to eat, because when you first arrive, especially in Europe, they say, try to stay up as late as you can, go to bed at 10 o'clock. But they go out and get something to eat, and they were pickpocketed. Pickpockets is a big problem in a lot of those places. So it's more than just, but then you don't want to turn whether it's a business trip or a personal trip, into a tragedy. Certain things like you should always have copies of your passport, have a copy at your residence, and also have a copy hidden somewhere in your suitcase, so that if you do lose your passport, it's a lot easier for the embassy to recreate it if you've seen one. You mentioned that there are some places that are very active in economic and industrial espionage. I mean, you already talked about China. Are there other places as well?
Yeah, actually, Russia obviously is a very big player as well. If anybody goes there, I mean, Vladimir Putin has even made a statement very similar to the Chinese statement that, hey, you're on our soil, you're fair game, your intellectual properties are fair game. So Russia is obviously a key place. India, a lot of people don't think of India, but India is a hotbed for espionage as well, for stealing secrets. If you travel to some of the big international hubs, like in Abu Dhabi, like a Dubai, like London. People don't think of London. London, there's so many transits going in and out of London every day. It's very good for intelligence operatives to work their way in. Any of the STAN countries, when I say STAN, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, those kind of places, you may think, well, I never go to those countries. Why would, obviously. But you'd be surprised. In a lot of these emerging markets where there's places, oil, like in Nigeria, anywhere there's natural resources and there's big companies who are coming in to try to get these big commodity contracts, you can bet that there are going to be operatives, intelligence operatives there trying to gain this specific kind of information. And an interesting thing, we had a discussion earlier with the students. And a lot of the students they're just that. They're like students. They say, well, I'm a student. Who would want something from me? Well, there's actually, recently, about 2 years ago, Michigan State University, my alma mater, they have a sister college in Abu Dhabi, in the Emirates. And they were finding that a lot of the students over there, the engineering students, the IT students, were starting to get elicited by a lot of strangers or offered jobs. Hey, why don't you come work for us at our company? And it became very strange that the professors back in the US started saying, wait a minute, why are all these young kids suddenly getting hit up and offered jobs and stuff every time they go over there? And what it was is some local intelligence services or even third country intelligence services operating in that area trying to just get these guys where they're young. They know they're smart. They know they're going to get a great job in a couple years. They know they're going to gain access. And it may take 5 years to get access, but they're going to get access to some very high-tech stuff, and they're going to work on some high-tech stuff. So they're going to start working on them when they're young to try to get this and get the little, the contracts in place. We also talked about university instructors as well, or university professors. There's a big push, or there's always really been with the academic world, and we gave the example that you may be a professor, you may have written this great thesis paper, this great published article, and suddenly you are working on some cutting edge stuff that maybe overlaps with the government a little bit. You're working on an IT project, it's government funded grant you've got, so you're helping out the government. And you suddenly get a phone call one day saying, hey professor, read that paper you wrote, outstanding stuff, tell you what, could you fly, we'll pick up the tab for everything, could you fly over to our country, we'll fly you first class, put you up, you just speak for 1 hour and we'll do it. And the professor, oh hey, yeah, of course, I'm coming. You know, they treat them right, it's 5-star hotels, great meals, the professor gives his great speech. Afterwards, the person comes up and says, professor, that was outstanding. Can I ask you something? Do you consult at all on the side? Because I'd really like to bring you on as a consultant. You know, we pay about $2,500 a day. I hope that fits your rate, you know. And so the professor, he's just on top of the world. So suddenly they're building this relationship with the professors. And the professors, again, they're working on a government grant that may come in. And suddenly, you know, there's a little bit, hey, professor, we're both academics. You know, I think there should be some good academic partnership. Could you share a little bit about what you're working for? Of course, we'll pay you your hourly rate and your daily rate for everything. And suddenly, slowly, without even the professors realizing, this information is slowly getting sucked over to the other side as well. And it happens. And it's not malicious. It's not, you know, that the professors know that they're doing anything wrong, but this happens. You consider our national laboratories, our DOE national laboratories. Take a guess which countries, I'll give you a hint. Guess what the top 3 countries that come to the United States and visit our nuclear labs, our DOE nuclear labs in the United States, what countries they come from? Iran? Well, Iran, not anymore. China, India, Russia. The scientists are coming over. Academic exchange of ideas is what they call it. And the same thing happens. They build a relationship. Hey, thanks for coming. Thanks for allowing us to your DOE National Lab. You should come over to Russia and see our stuff too. We want to get your expert opinion. And then you go over there, and then they start the whole recruitment pitch. And we talk about, in the intelligence world, the recruitment cycle. And the recruitment cycle basically means spotting, assessing, recruiting, handling, and terminating an asset or a person who has information. So basically what that means is you go to a conference as an intelligence officer and you find somebody who's got what you think is access, and you start having a conversation. And then, so you spotted them. And then you start assessing them. Hey, this guy's disgruntled. That's always the greatest one. If you can find a guy who thinks he's smarter than he is or feels underappreciated by his boss, that's the guy you're targeting. And you're going to start to assess him. And then eventually you're going to recruit him, saying, you know what, I agree with you. Your bosses do not give you the respect, you know, that you deserve. I think you and I should start doing some contracting together. And then eventually, hey, can you get me this? Can you get me this file? Can you get me this proposal? And suddenly you start getting those. And eventually when the guy, and then you handle him, and then eventually when the guy runs out of access, maybe he gets transferred to another division, you break off contact because he doesn't have anything left to give. And this happens every day. This is the intelligence cycle. They say in Washington, D.C., there's more spies in Washington, D.C. than anywhere in the world. Every 1 minute out of the day, 24 hours a day, somebody is committing an act of espionage in Washington, D.C., and that's just D.C. Silicon Valley is actually the spot where there's most economic espionage in the United States, so it's going on there as well. So it's a legitimate problem. Happens every day. It's happened for years. There's a reason they call espionage the world's second oldest profession. And it will continue. It's getting worse every single year, particularly with the ease of access to gain a lot of these computer secrets. You look at what's private Bergdorf or whatever, the kid who had access to the SIPRNet system in the military, just put it in thumb drives and was just sucking off secret cables and classified stuff. You know, here he is, an 18-year-old disgruntled kid, just pulling off secret documents. So it happens. And just as it could happen in the military, it can happen in private business even easier.
Just to emphasize that point again, we had an espionage case in the Bureau where a Chinese scientist came over to one of our labs over here, scientific labs, and they come over for like 6 weeks or so. And the scientist from China grew a pretty good relationship with a Chinese scientist that was working in our lab who was American. So then they reciprocated, and a few months later the American scientist went over to China and again stayed for about 6 weeks, and it was a good relationship, and they were having a give and take in their laboratory, and the Chinese scientist says, you know, I'm really having problems with this one area. I can't seem to solve this formula. So they were all wrapped up in the conversation of the work. So the American Chinese scientist says, well, I can tell you why you're hung up, because your formula is wrong, and corrected the formula. He gave him one of our atomic secrets. And that's how easy it is. So he was being played. That built up their relationship. So the person's, not only did we lose the bomb, but we also lost this guy's career and everything else. I mean, it was years worth of work that now China has been given to him. So that's just one example.
And I was going to say, on that same note, I thought you were going to refer to, too, of Greg Chung. Greg Chung was the Chinese-American scientist. He worked for Boeing and then worked for NASA. And NASA one time was moving out their binders for the diagram schematics for the space shuttle. And Chung was charged with taking these paper documents, putting them in his van, and moving it to the new NASA location. Well, they sort of got lost in transit, and then the Bureau started the investigation against Chung. He was doing this for 10 years, committing espionage. He would go out, he'd put his trash out the night before, his garbage out, but then in the morning, right before the trash man came, he'd go out with another bag and set it down. Well, that bag contained all the diagrams of the space shuttle, the C-17 aircraft, and then I think there was one of our missile systems in there too. And the FBI caught this all on videotape, and Greg Chung, when they raided his house, he had 300,000 documents on classified materials specifically relating to the space shuttle. And all of the space shuttle things that we have here in the United States, exact duplicate copies in both Russia and China right now.
Anybody here ever heard of spandex? It's made by DuPont, and it's manufactured, the plant that makes it is, I don't know if it still is, but it used to be Argentina. 3 people stole the formula and then were trying to sell it to competitors. DuPont got word of this, and the head of security for DuPont over the years has always been an ex-FBI agent, contacted the Bureau, and we started negotiating with these 3 people, and they said they would not come to the United States. They felt safe if they weren't in the United States. So we said, okay, we want to purchase it, but we want to see the formula first and make sure you have it. And they were asking something like $10 million. So we set it up in Switzerland. It's a neutral country. They felt safe. But we had contacts over there. And the person they were dealing with was FBI agents undercover. And we purchased the stuff from them and arrested them, and the Swiss authorities did the right thing. So it happens all the time, something simple as that. And I could name several cases similar to that. I worked a case at the Ford Motor Company in Detroit where Ford Motor Company makes they used to make their own glass downriver. And that formula was stolen. So that was it. Now, let me ask you this, Luke. If you're traveling overseas and you suspect that maybe you are a target or you've spotted something that doesn't look right, what should you do?
Yeah. That's a good point. The thing is, you do not want to read my book and then suddenly go out and be an instant spy. In fact, we were talking about this with the students earlier. We were saying, surveillance. How do you know you're under surveillance? Well, to take a surveillance detection training course is months and months of practice, and then it's operational when you're on the street trying to determine if you are under surveillance, going to other countries and doing it in other countries. So you're just not going to read a book and then suddenly know that somebody's following you. Likewise, you do not want to be walking down the street and doing little tactics, looking in a mirror to see if somebody's behind you or anything, because when you start doing that, you actually start drawing more attention to yourself. You don't want to go through your hotel room, get on the bed, and start looking in the light fixture or the sprinkler to say, oh, is there a camera in there? Because probably another camera is catching you in this act, and suddenly the people who are watching you are cameras saying, wait a minute, why is this guy in the bed? Why is he looking for microphones? Why does he know about this? Oh, he must be a spy. He must have something to hide. Now you've just spun up a surveillance team on you for doing these kinds of acts. So the best advice that we would ever give to anybody is when you are overseas, be alert, but your demeanor should be that of boring. It should be of routine. It should be of nonchalance, not that you were looking for any type of surveillance. If you actually think you're under surveillance, then you have to make a decision. Is this for espionage reasons, or is this an actual criminal intent? Do I have to worry about somebody kidnapping me next? So you probably want to report something to whoever your local security contact would be, if you have a local person there. But in some cases, you might be on your own. Which is a situation you want to probably just stay closer to the hotel if that's the case, if you actually think you're falling into this situation. And watch what you say on the phone. Everything you say on a hotel phone, monitored. Don't pick up the hotel phone and say, yeah, I think I had surveillance today. Well, there's a guy listening to the phone hearing you say that too. So you just have to be alert.
Yeah. And this actually happens shortly after we were building a new embassy in Moscow. The government was, U.S. government. And it was just about built when our engineers went through it and found out that, there were so many listening devices in the embassy that we couldn't occupy it. And we had just opened an office over there, the FBI office. Our FBI offices overseas are called legal attaches. And I was a legal attache in Rome for a short period of time. So the Bureau says, we need to send somebody over there to look into this, and they sent me over to Moscow, and this was in 1995. And they told me when I arrived that there's going to be cameras and listening devices in your hotel room. So don't spend much time in your hotel room. But when you know you're being watched 24 hours a day, it's a little disconcerting. The only thing I did was, as soon as I hit the room, I would sleep, and that was it. But it goes to show you it does happen. I was detained and harassed by the Chilean authorities when I was in Chile, and I had an asset in country who met me, and I gave him my passport because I didn't want to take my passport, and said, hold my passport until they release me, because I don't want to confiscate my passport. And then as soon as they released me, I met him, got in a car, we went to the airport and got a plane out of the country. So it does happen now. I was in a different situation because they knew who I was. But even for people that are not in the government, they're very much targets. And I think you mentioned earlier this morning that you were in a room that's happened to you several times.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I've been in places in the Middle East where I've found the listening devices and everything, and again was smart not to touch it or anything. But I was in Taiwan one time, and I was laying in my bed in Taiwan, and I was looking at the TV, and right under the TV I saw a little camera. And I got out and I looked at it and I followed the wire, and the wire did not go into anywhere in the TV. It just went in a separate wire into the wall, this little camera under the thing. So I called down. First I called my colleague I was traveling with, and I said to him, hey man, and he goes, hey, don't even say it. You found a camera under your TV. And I'm like, yeah, you got one too? And he's like, yeah. So I called down to the front desk and I said to the guy, I said, excuse me, there is a camera underneath my television that's pointed directly at my bed. And the front desk, no, there's no such thing. And I'm saying, I know what a camera looks like. There's a camera underneath my TV pointed directly at my bed. And the guy goes, oh, that. Yeah, you're in actually one of our handicapped rooms. It's for elderly people. Should they have any problems, we can monitor. But I assure you, it's not on right now. So yeah, you can only imagine what the purpose of that would be. So, and just another quick story. A friend of mine, a female, was traveling overseas, and she was just got out of the shower. Her shower bathroom window was all fogged up, except for a nice little hole that didn't steam up behind her bathroom mirror. Everything was fogged. And so she says she's looking at it, she's kind of looking down at it, and out of the corner of her eye, she can see on the TV screen in the living room herself naked on TV looking at this thing. She can see herself there, and it was basically just a message from whether it be probably the local intelligence service, just saying, hey, we got you, we're keeping tabs on you, don't do anything stupid while you're in our country. So it does happen a lot more frequently than you would ever imagine.
Let me ask you another question here. I don't know if you've seen recently, there was a movie out about a year or so ago, and as a matter of fact, the second version of it came out, I think, this year, which was a flop. But and I noticed in your bio you put human trafficking, but the movie's Taken with Liam Neeson. Does that kind of stuff really happen?
It really does happen, and you do see it when you start going to particularly Central European countries, Central Asian countries. You see that. You see women who are literally being trafficked. They're promised, and sometimes, you could even make a case that it's happening here in the United States in some places. These girls are promised, hey, we'll give you a work visa to come over to our country. You'll make good money. You can send it home to your parents. You can be a waitress. And then they're brought in and their passports are kept, and usually they're put into some kind of strip club, which basically is a front for a brothel, and all of these things. And the girls are stuck until they can pay back a certain amount of money, and a lot of times they never go home. So it does happen. It is more prevalent overseas that you do see these things, but yeah, it's a reality. That movie is, the guy going after him and doing the things he did is maybe a little far-fetched, but certainly the concept behind it is real.
Yeah, I found it kind of interesting that he was in France, killed about 10 people, and nothing happened, I think you want to open it up to questions and answers now?
This is a great time for any questions. We have a microphone here, so if you have any question, please raise your hand. We'll bring the microphone. The purpose of the microphone, that the session is being recorded, but openly and publicly we are recording this. Right here, one, and then there's one over there also. So we can start here maybe, right here. And then Anna, you're next. Yeah. Here you go.
Okay, I have somebody who's in business and is afraid of the Chinese copying things, and you mentioned that the Japanese are they worse than the Chinese?
I would say the Chinese are still a bigger offender. However, to give you an example, if you go and do business, or if your colleague goes to Japan and does business, he'll probably be brought into a waiting room before the meeting, sat down. So we would go in as business colleagues. We're going to go meet with the Japanese. We'll go in, and a nice young lady will say, oh, would you like some tea? What would you like? I'll go fetch it. And your meeting is running a little late. It'll be about 10 minutes. I'll get you some tea. So Bill and I will be speaking. All right, so what are we going to go, what's our ceiling for the negotiation? What are we going to do? Well, we're talking about our last-minute strategy before we go into the room, and there's an audio device here, here, and here, and the Japanese, who were just about to go in and do our negotiation or meeting with, they're listening to us, two dumb, gaijings out here having our strategy session last minute. So the Japanese are more in terms of industrial espionage, business on business. The Chinese are government on business, government on government.
So then you're talking about more conversations and trying to get into computers?
The hacking still goes to the Russians, actually, a little bit stronger for hacking U.S. businesses. I would say the Russians and the Chinese are right there as well. But the Japanese, not so much for the hacking. I think the Japanese are more for while you're in country, it'll be more business kind of theft.
We have had cases with the Japanese in the past where they were actually over here trying to get to know somebody in certain companies, and then would actually get access to the building and go in and steal the plans to whatever the new gadget was that they were going to. We actually had undercover operations and filmed them right in the middle of the act doing it. Of course, we had inside information also.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming. Such a valuable position for us. My question is to you, Mr. Bennis. If you were offered a position, another job, what would it be and why?
That's a great question. I would be a high school football coach if I if I won the lottery tomorrow. I'd go coach football.
Actually, I mean, still in your field, would you still be continuing your same specialization?
Yeah, no.
or
In all
something
seriousness, usually people from our background go on to be security directors at other companies. And actually work on the investigations within companies and educating the travelers for that company. That's the natural progression going into the next field from what we're doing. Or, as we've done too, we've each opened up our own company as well and just do private consulting either back to the government or to foreign governments too. Yeah.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your talk. As a physician, I have a question for you. I sometimes get these random emails from people in China, and it's very interesting. They say, "Professor, we want to come and work in your lab." Similar, are they potentially looking for something they can exploit for me, even though I don't think I have anything of interest to them?
Absolutely. In fact, we were talking about the Japanese, and that the Japanese actually tried to spy against Cleveland Clinic to get a formula that they thought was going to cure Alzheimer's several years ago. So absolutely, it's called a watering hole, where basically they will set up a website. The Russians do this a lot. They'll set up a website that they know people will go and visit, whether it be sports cars, Maseratis or something, hoping that big businessmen will go to this website, click on the Maserati, and it's basically a link that just allows them a virus or something back into your emails. But healthcare, shouldn't be discounted. Again, if they think you have access, and they don't know who's really who, so they're just kind of going to throw out a wide net and hope that they can latch on. And when you talk about students too, if you're a foreign student, let's say from China, and you're coming to the United States to study, and 99% of the time, everything is above board, it's legit. However, if you are coming to the United States from China, let's say to study here at USF, you may be paid a visit by the MSS, the State Security Service of China, who will remind you your obligation to the state to send back any documents that any of the professors are writing, any kind of syllabus, kind of textbooks they're using, everything, because they're just trying to suck in as much as data as they possibly can.
But also, if I could add to that, they're looking for two angles, I would suspect. One is they're looking for somebody to sponsor them so they get a work visa to come here. The second thing is, if you are, the Chinese especially, are the biggest and the best counterfeiters in the world. And a lot of the pharmaceutical companies are really complaining to the Department of Justice about how so many of their medicines are being counterfeited in China and sold. And what happens is when they test some of them, they actually are not the right strength they're supposed to be, and sometimes they're totally wrong. So they want to get their foot in the healthcare industry, because that you're talking about, for example, when one of the pills that I'm on, Lipitor, went generic, the company that makes them is lose millions, hundreds of millions of dollars.
We have one question on the back.
Thank you very much. One question for each of our speakers. First, how would you counsel recent grads who want to enter your field and have recently gotten a degree from, let's say, USF? And the other question to Mr. Espinosa, going back to the Chile situation, it would seem to me it takes an awful lot of testosterone to try to interfere with a deputy director of the FBI. Can you comment on why the stakes are so high and how that gets dealt with?
Okay. Well, to answer your first question first, I was a USF grad, and I heard that they were hiring. And I think that's the key. You gotta contact people and find out what agency is hiring. It's actually easier today than it was in 1969 when I started applying, because it's a long process when you apply for one of these type of jobs, because as we mentioned earlier, you have to get a clearance. Everybody that works for the FBI, whether you're just delivering mail or you're an FBI agent, has a top secret, minimum of a top secret clearance. which is a full background investigation. That means they go out and they talk to your teachers, they talk to your neighbors, they talk to everybody you grew up with. I mean, it's a long process. And right now, the U.S. government is behind by about 9 months in that process. So it's a long process. But today, all the federal agencies anyway, if that's the type of work you want to get into, is have websites. And they're talking about getting in what openings they have. And for example, we used to get a lot of people in the FBI that maybe were 3 years as a Border Patrol agent or a DEA agent, and they came over to the FBI. And I think the same with the CIA. They would work their way into those agencies. And I'll let Luke talk about, because I know you worked for Raytheon, how the defense contractors.
That's another great angle, especially for recent graduates. I know that our company, what we'll do is we'll take a lot of recent graduates and we'll put them in an internship program that maybe we can put them on for a clearance. And again, it could be 9 months, but right now it's really about 18 months to get a clearance, and it costs the U.S. taxpayers a little over $100 grand for every one of those people to get this. So if you can start as an intern, start with a basic secret clearance. A secret clearance is more of a background check. You can get that. And then gradually, as you get more responsibility within a company, even if you're an intern, you're getting that clearance. But once you hit that clearance, particularly at the top secret level or a top secret with what we call caveats, special compartmentalized riders, let's say, on it, you're going to shoot from being an intern to a six-figure salary. So you got to put your investment time in up front. But I would certainly say if you don't hear from the government, apply for all the government agencies right away. Get your internship or get a low-paying job with one of the defense contractors that has government contracts. Start that process, and then when you do finally get a call from the FBI or one of these, three-letter soup agencies, they call you. You've already started the process, and it's going to make it that much quicker to transition over to federal service.
And you'd be surprised. I was an adjunct professor in graduate school up in Delaware, where I live, and every semester students would come to me and say, how could I get a job in the federal government, And it was surprising to me. They're not aware of how many agencies are out there. I mean, when they're taking this cut that they're taking now, there's so much duplication of effort. But there's inspector generals, there's the agriculture department has investigators, all these agencies. Congress even has their own investigators. I remember one day I get called they were having this big summit for the agencies that were involved in illegal drugs, investigating illegal drugs. So I thought it would be the FBI, DEA, and maybe a couple other agencies. Well, I showed up and there were over 300 agencies represented. I mean, it's just ridiculous. But there are a number of agencies, and it's a good way for somebody to get started working for like one of these inspector generals or internal security for one of these companies or other agencies.
Oh, and there is a fast track way too. If you have a contact at the Bureau, at the CIA, at the NSA, get an internship as a USF student with one of these agencies. That will fast track your clearance. You graduate, you're 21 years old, and you're walking into a great job that's going to give you a lot of experience at 21. It's difficult, but that's the fastest way to do it.
Yeah, the internship is the best way to get in. I have a daughter, I have a couple of daughters, one's here, but I have another daughter who interned at the FBI one summer because I guess she knew somebody, but she's matter of fact, today's her birthday. She's 37 years old today. She says whenever she applies for a job, they don't care about she worked in sports marketing and all the stuff that she did. The only thing they ask her is, hey, what did you do when you were with the FBI? So, and to answer your second question, when I was detained, I was retired from the FBI, and we were investigating. It was a foreign company had retained my company to go do some work down in Chile. This company was in trouble because they were accused of paying off government officials in Chile. So we went down and did an internal audit. Couldn't do an internal investigation because it's against Chilean law. As I told them, we were doing an audit. But the reason why they were questioning me, they wanted to put the pressure on everybody else. I had a team of there were about 6 of us. and they knew I was the head of the team, and they wanted to put pressure on me. As a matter of fact, I told the asset that was in the country, I said, everybody else, they better get out of the country because they're going to get, we pretty much had finished our report, and tell them to hide their passport because they're going to get taken. And, but they were just trying to show that, hey, even though we're a sovereign country down here, and we can, don't try to push us around.
One last question, and then we will continue our discussion outside. A wonderful reception is waiting for us, so please go ahead.
Hi, my question, now that you have me completely and utterly paranoid to travel, not having read your book, for those of us that aren't in Fortune 500 companies but could have a friend that is working in that, how do we kind of not fall into that net you've spoken of and not provide information that's going to essentially lead to the downfall of your best friend's company or your dad's company or something like that?
Yeah, well, again, if someone's going to approach a student, they're going to approach doing that, what I talked about, the spotting, assessing. So they may just come to you, and you may not have access to a Fortune 500 or any secrets, but you may have a brother that does, and they'll try to work that angle. So what you need to do is always ask yourself a question after you have a conversation. Anybody, when you have questions or conversation with strangers on an airplane or at a business lounge, whatever it is, a bar, go home and ask yourself at night, did that guy just elicit me? Meaning, what questions did he ask me? Did he throw stuff back right away when was somebody probing for access for what I just did? And it's kind of a weird habit to get into. You become very suspicious of other people when you do it. You become very defensive, but as long as you can recognize it ahead of time and ask yourself that question, maybe not so much while it's going on, but usually, and a lot of times I've been elicited. I mean, I've been offered straight up $50,000, a briefcase of cash in a Middle Eastern country, for the guy saying, hey, if you give me this, here's 50 grand. Can you get this for me? You know, I mean, it's not that obvious a lot of times. But sometimes you'll go back to your hotel room and you'll say, you know, that was a nice guy. And then you think about it. Wait a minute, that wasn't a nice guy. He asked me this, this, this. Man, I was so stupid. I can't believe I told him, you know, these things. And you just got to get in a habit of being a little bit more suspect about that. And again, go into it in full detail. So.
But the other thing, just to mention, is it's just like when you first go away to college somewhere, you want to get away from home, and you go away and you could get yourself in trouble. Well, it's the same thing. People, when they go overseas, no matter what age they are, they feel like they're in a vacation land or whatever, and they can act up and nobody's going to know about it. So you have to behave yourself, number one, and not bring attention to yourself. And if you do things that are logically right, and then you don't flash money around, you don't you behave yourself, then I think you're fine.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. We really appreciate it. Thank you. We also would like to thank you for coming and being part of our first IT Matters lecture series and honoring these two distinguished speakers. As I have said, the reception is waiting for you. Please do stay. Also, Luke's book will be available through his publisher outside if you would like to purchase it for a discount. I think it sells for $25, but today they are going to sell it for $20, and he'll be happy to sign it for you. Also, feel free to jingle mingle with our speakers and also students too. Thank you again for coming and being part of our campus.